Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing one of my favorite Pokemon in the Great League that at long last finally has some meta play, and that is Furret. I've had a rank 3 Great League Furret since 2020, and I've patiently bided my time as it got update after update. And now, this season, with the addition of Swift and Trailblaze, this thing finally feels like a strong anti-meta pick that can hold its own against the best Pokemon the Great League has to offer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at my rank 3 Furret in the Open Great League. Hopping into the first match, leading Shadow Galarian Weezing into Blastoise. With this team, I decided to use Furret as a safe swap, as I think that it has some pretty solid coverage across the board and it has nice bulk. So for situations like these, when I don't want to take a charge move on my lead, I can save switch into the Furret and catch a Hydro Cannon. Out comes a Shadow Alolan Ninetales. It is on Powder Snow. Unfortunately, Sucker Punch is resisted here, but Sucker Punch is still a great move, so the Sucker Punches will still add up. Sucker Punch, of course, being a clone of what Counter used to be before it got nerfed. Weather Ball will pick up the KO. I'm going to send in the Weezing. Weezing, I'm more than happy to shield just to preserve some health on the Weezing and look to overfarm quite significantly. Now, I'm just shy of the back-to-back sludges, so if my opponent brings back in the Blastoise, Blastoise is still one off the move, and I can successfully get my shield back or just get rid of their energy. It's pretty likely they're going to shield here, as I don't think they're going to want to just throw away an entire Hydro Cannon. So they'll shield, but again, I get a catch. So we are preserving the Weezing, getting a catch onto the Malamar. Hydro Cannon connects. In the back is Charge-a-Bug. And this is going to be a little bit scary, but I think Galarian Weezing will be able to clutch here for me. Charge-a-Bug is going to fire off X-Scissor, and I know that I cannot shield the Malamar. My win condition is with the Galarian Weezing. Galarian Weezing is going to be shielding up everything here, and I'm going to need to overfarm as much as possible. Weezing should win CMP over Charge-a-Bug, so I'm going to overfarm as much as I possibly can and go for the Brutal Swing. They can't shield this, because if they do, I can just throw my move and win the CMP tie. Blastoise should be 3 rollouts away from a move, so I can make Brutal Swing number 1 and get to a Sludge to guarantee the win. So we never really had good alignment in that game, but with some well-timed catches, we're able to fight back and get the win. Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Dusknoir in the next match. Opponent is going to save switch into Shadow Drapion, and Shadow Drapion is a problem Pokemon for this team. Honestly, I kind of forgot Drapion was a Pokemon when I put this team together, but I was, I believe, able to beat every Drapion that I went up against, as Drapion still takes huge damage from Shadow Sludge. So I'm going to fire off another Sludge. That's going to be shielded by my opponent, and they are going to play to the CMP tie, denying Weezing's energy. I'm okay with letting this go because I'm going to send in Malamar and I'm going to go for the greediest farm down in history. Psywaves are resisted, but I'm going to try. Come on, Malamar. Opponent tries for the crunch and they do not get there. The Psywave gets the farm down, and now I just have a near insurmountable energy advantage. Their final Pokemon is Wigglytuff. That's not going to be a problem. Superpower lands. In comes Furret, and my opponent is going to send out Dusknoir. Dusknoir is already at 2 Dynamic Punches, if I'm not mistaken, so they are going to fire them off back to back. The pacing on Dusknoir is just insane, but it's not the Shadow, which means I can actually survive Dynamic Punch. And I'm going to fire off the Trailblaze. The goal is to overfarm to make sure that I can make it to a move versus the Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff is going to be hit with a boosted Swift. That is going to guarantee their shield, and now I can switch back into the Malamar. Malamar, superpower is going to inflict serious damage onto the Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff is going to make it to a charge attack, KOing the Malamar, but they are in range. One Sucker Punch KOs the Wigglytuff, and we're able to take the win. Shadow Weezing against Furret. So my opponent also trying out Furret. Unfortunately, this is a matchup where Furret is going to struggle because Sucker Punch is resisted. So they are going to go for the Swift. That does do quite a lot of damage though, and now I can fire off the Sludge. Sludge will not knock out. Furret does have some pretty nice bulk, but I will outpace thanks to Weezing's lightning fast pacing with Fairy Wind, and Brutal Swing will KO the Furret. Opponent is now going to send in Grumpig. Grumpig looking for a farm down, but no, they're going to switch and make a nice catch of the Brutal Swing onto their own Galarian Weezing. So my opponent is actually trying out the same core that I am, a very similar team composition. Furret, Galarian Weezing, and then a Psywave user. They're going to go for the Sludge. Here I went for the Foul Play, but this is where the reduction in damage to Foul Play actually led me astray, because I thought that would KO, and it did not. So I'm still getting a little bit used to the new damage ranges on things, but I think I should still be in a winning position as long as I'm able to play well. So I'm going to go for the Foul Play right away. Grumpig is realistically never going to be able to Psywave down here because Malamar just so heavily resists Psywave. Each Psywave is only doing 1 damage. And Malamar has a pretty solid HP pool. So I get to fire off another Foul Play. That's going to be shielded by my opponent. I'm going to farm up pretty close to a move and then switch into Furret, and this will guarantee me the win. Not only do I Sucker Punch it into a range where Foul Play will KO, but I live a Dynamic Punch. I could make a Swift that would just win me the game on the spot. That forces the second Dynamic Punch, and now that they've used their energy, Malamar is going to be able to take the win. My opponent genuinely played really well there. I had very favorable alignment throughout, but they made that game quite difficult for me. Shadow Galarian Weezing into Grumpig, and I am very okay staying in here with the Weezing and playing it out to start, but that's a devastating catch. Opponent catches the Brutal Swing, sneaks a Mud Slap when they do, and they send in Marowak. This is actually the non-Shadow Marowak, which is a bit of a surprise to see since we did just have a Rocket event. I'm going to overfarm as much as possible and then go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze into the Marowak. Marowak hangs on 1 HP. That is a little bit unfortunate. So the extra bulk from the non-shadow paying off there for my opponent. I do exit the matchup boosted, which is quite nice. Can I make it to a move versus the Grumpig? Yes, I can. The rank 3 Furret coming in clutch with a 1 HP survive. I'm going to pivot back into the Weezing because this way I can guarantee to either get some damage or force energy. And it looks like that's actually a CMP tie. That is even better for me, as now the Grumpig's extremely low. I can send in the Malamar, and in the back is Cradily. And at this point, there realistically isn't a way for me to lose this game, as long as I play it properly. I go for the Foul Play, knowing that they're more than likely going to shield first because they are a Rock Tomb user. So they are going to fire off the Rock Tomb. I'm still going to look to connect with a superpower. It's a -1 superpower, but it will still do a lot of damage. And then I'm eventually just going to look to pivot out, reset all of my debuffs, and then I'm in a great spot to close out the game. So I'm going to switch so I can defer that Bullet Seed, and in doing so, reset the debuff, and now I can bring back in Malamar. Malamar, its attack stat restored to full, KOs with the Foul Play. In comes the Grumpig. Grumpig makes a move on 1 HP, but I still do have a shield. And it looks like my opponent did concede the match, realizing they could not get the 2 charge moves. Shadow Galarian Weezing against Talonflame. Bit of an uncomfortable matchup here, and I'm going to stay in here and play this out because I know that Sludge is going to do quite a lot of damage to the Talonflame. So Sludge is going to connect. That damage is just ridiculous. I know I've used Weezing in quite a few teams this season, but man, this thing is so much fun to play. I'm going to go for the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing into the Talonflame, gets the shield. They should throw right when they get it, so I'm actually going to save that energy and catch onto Furret. Again, Furret is quite bulky, so I'm very happy to absorb that energy. Out comes a Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion going to be uncomfortable for this team to deal with, but Furret already puts us on a pretty good spot here by landing a Swift, and now the Drapion has already lost 2/3 of its health. They go for the Aqua Tail. Unfortunately, that is just enough to KO. And now I'm going to send in the Malamar. Malamar going to tank the crunch. I do get debuffed. I'm going to switch into the Weezing, and I time it perfectly so I can play to the CMP tie. Brutal Swing is going to knock them out, and they're going to bring back in the Talonflame. Talonflame, Brutal Swing is going to pick up the KO or force the final shield. It's all going to come down to what they have in the back. It's more Pekko, and I have an energy advantage. Their only way back in this game is with a Psychic Fangs bait. I no shield. It's the Psychic Fangs that is triple resisted, and that loses the game for the opponent on the spot. Pacing wise, this endgame was not in their favor, so they had to try something to get back in the game, but we read them like a book, and we take the win. Shadow Galarian Weezing into Shadow Feraligatr. Feraligatr, still a pretty solid pick as long as you're not running into stuff like Lapras or Blastoise, and I don't have either one of those on this team. The nice thing for Weezing is Weezing is able to outpace in this matchup, so Weezing is going to fire off the Sludge and grab a shield from the opponent. I'm going for Sludge number 2. I'm able to outpace due to the 5-4 pacing, whereas Feraligatr is still on 5-5. Now I'm going to be shielding up the Weezing, and I should be able to outpace and get to a Sludge here. So I'm going to make it to the Sludge. Opponent is going to get a catch onto the Forretress, and that is incredibly bad. I'm going to try and bank a move for later here, but they're actually on Mirror Shot. I was not expecting Forretress to be on Mirror Shot. I end up losing the move, and at this point, this game is probably over. Now, in theory, I could have potentially waited the turn there on the Sludge, but on Android, if you try and turn wait, basically, in the past 2 seasons, the game will not update, so I've just gotten to the point where I don't really wait turns because the game just doesn't really do anything when you do that. In the back is actually a Bug Bite Wormadam. Look at the spice from the opponent. I know I can't win, so I'm just going to resign. What a cool team from my opponent. Okay, we move to the next match, leading into a Cradily with our Shadow Galarian Weezing. Shadow Galarian Weezing Sludge is going to be shielded. I'm going to switch and make a catch of the Rock Tomb onto Furret. Furret, very happy to tank that damage. Furret going to farm up, and now my opponent is going to send out a Spiritomb, so it appears they do not have a great response to Furret. As Furret is able to ramp up its Sucker Punch damage with these Trailblazes, making it to another Trailblaze as well. The Sucker Punch to Trailblaze counts able to outpace Spiritomb, and Spiritomb pays a heavy price, as it loses almost all of its health in exchange for quite a lot of energy. I send in the Malamar. Malamar, I'm expecting them to just blind a Rock Tomb, and then I'm going to try and snipe down with Weezing, but they make a last-second move. Oh, I thought I could get that farm down, but I could not. They make a Shadow Ball, and now in comes Cradily. Cradily firing off its energy. They did bank a Rock Tomb, but I have so much energy on the Weezing. Weezing is now going to fire off a Sludge. This is a debuff Sludge, but it will still inflict some solid damage. In the back is Golisopod, and this is going to be a tough game to win. Golisopod is going to be hit with the Sludge. I'm going to switch out into the Malamar. Malamar, they are not going to let me get to a charge move. They throw. They could have potentially overfarmed more, but with that switch and the one residual that I had on the Malamar, they were not going to be able to farm up to the back-to-back that they would have needed. So they end up throwing here, trying to keep themselves a little healthy, but unfortunately, Galarian Weezing is just too much of a beast, and Galarian Weezing is able to take the win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Galarian Weezing into Blastoise. I'm going to employ the same strategy that I did before, which is fire off a Sludge, get some very nice damage, and then look to go for a catch onto the Furret. As Furret it's really, really nice at absorbing these hits and just offering some very nice neutral play to help let the Glacier options of the Weezing and the Malamar put in work later on. In comes Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, a little bit uncomfortable for a Sucker Punch user, but even so, I'm just going to spam out as many Swifts as I can possibly get to. Opponent is going to fire off energy. If they go for the Dark Pulse, it probably knocks out, but they actually go for an Aerial Ace instead. Aerial Ace will not knock out, so I can withstand the damage, make it to a Swift. I'm actually going to bank a Swift for later, send in the Weezing, and I'm playing to a CMP tie. Weezing, of course, going to win that CMP tie. Sludge is going to connect, and I'm very okay letting this move go, as it's going to do less than a move from Blastoise. But it's not the Blastoise that hits the field, it's going to be a Malamar, and this is going to be an interesting game. Malamar, massive damage from the Sludge, but this is actually a really bad health range for me to deal with. My Psywaves are triple resisted here. They only deal 1 damage per Psywave, so this is going to be tough. I think my way into this game is to go for a double shield, double resisted, well, triple resisted actually, Psywave down. I think that's what I have to do here. I debated throwing a foul play, but there's still a decent amount of health available on the Blastoise, but when they switch it in, I realized the Blastoise was less healthy than I remembered, and I think I may have made a mistake. I think I should have just thrown the energy at their Malamar to peel away their shields. The good news is I do have a move available on Furret, but Mandibuzz still has energy, and they can just bring in the Mandibuzz, and unfortunately Mandibuzz should be able to make a Dark Pulse first to Malamar, and once a Dark Pulse lands, I just can't win this game. I was able to get the Mandibuzz so close to getting KO'd, but I just can't do the last little bit of health. Here they're going to switch into the Malamar, which is a nice play from them, but realistically, their Malamar was too healthy for me to Psywave down, and the exact same can be said for the Mandibuzz, so that one proved to be a bit of a difficult game. Bad lead in the final match, leading into a Lapras. I save switch into Furret, and my opponent is going to respond with an Azumarill. This is a fine matchup for Furret. Furret is able to continually buff up its attack with Trail Blaze, and after one Trail Blaze, I can Sucker Punch them into range where a second Trail Blaze will actually be able to pick up the KO. I'm going to farm up a ton with the Furret, and I'm actually going for the bait. I'm expecting my opponent is going to sell out for switch advantage here, so I'm able to grab a shield with the bait. Now I can make it to another Trail Blaze and really put my opponent in an uncomfortable position. They decide to let it go. Furret absolutely popping off. In comes a Shadow Drapion. Drapion is going to get the farm down, but from here, I have a very clear path forward to victory. I can just send in the Weezing. Weezing will do fine enough into the Drapion, and the moment they send in the Lapras, it's going to be Malamar time. Malamar very comfortable shaking off Sparkling Aria damage just due to the fact that the Psy Waves again are triple resisted. So the opponent can't really do much of any damage here. And now I will overfarm to the max, superpower to pick up the KO. In comes Drapion, and Drapion is going to fire off an Aqua Tail just to pressure the shield of the Malamar. But I can throw this superpower to burn the switch clock, and then my switch should be available. They actually end up letting that through. I can send in the Weezing, and still with a shield to hide behind, I'm definitely going to shield to have that Fairy Wind register, and we will get a nice Fairy Wind farm down. I guess I could have double Brutal Swing, but either way, the game was over. All in all, I didn't really have high expectations for Furret, because Furret's been buffed a lot in the past and didn't really see a ton of play, but honestly it felt pretty solid to use. Granted, pairing something with Shadow Galarian Weezing, most things are going to feel pretty good to use, but overall, the Furret really did surprise me. It felt a little bit reminiscent to Vigoroth. Obviously, it didn't quite have the same insane coverage as Vigoroth did back in the day, but Sucker Punch is a Dark-type clone of what Counter used to be. Swift, very similar to Body Slam, obviously just slightly less powerful, and Trailblaze, a move that obviously Vigoroth got to Rock Slide in 7 counters. Trailblaze, you do get to the first in 7 Sucker Punches. So there was a little bit of Vigoroth vibes here. Obviously, it's not quite at the level that Vigoroth was, because Vigoroth was the most flexible Pokemon basically that the Go Battle League had ever seen, but I think it offers a lot of neutral play, and its ability to boost up can really allow it to take over games. So I think it's genuinely a very playable Pokemon right now. You can pair Furret up with some strong teammates and have great results because it's a very viable anti-meta pick. And the more things that I try in this meta, outside of Togetic, which I tried it, I've got to say, I just think Togetic's bad. I really don't think Psyshock did much of anything for it, but most everything I've tried I felt has either been very playable anti-meta or just meta. So I feel like they did a really nice job this update in terms of giving us a lot of viable Pokemon to work with. Because as time goes on, people will eventually figure out what are the absolute top meta strategies. Like last season's meta ended up being a lot of Azumarill and Shadow Drapion because that was the best core. But at the start here, it honestly feels like there is a tremendous amount of options, and I'm very grateful for that. Let me know down in the comments, how have you been liking the new meta so far? Because to me, it's been very enjoyable getting to test out all these new mons. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.